All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. Thank whoever brought you here. To my regular listeners, here we go again. Another gem of a person. Shout out to podmatch.com for getting all the legwork and all the logistics out of getting guests on this show. Appreciate you guys very much. I have Kirk Mccarley, who is what I consider kind of a renaissance man. Everything does everything from teacher spin class to coaching businesses, and also does some things with ESPN as well. So I'm looking forward to diving into his story. With all that being said, Kirk, welcome to the show.
S1, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. Like I said, there is a ton of things that you do. You are, I want to say, what, 60 something years young. You have done a lot. And it's like as you grow older, and one of the things I actually heard when I was listening to you before we started recording, I heard how you kind of have a refreshed spirit on life and how you're constantly trying to get better, constantly trying to do things, constantly just trying to stick around, for your grandbabies and things of that nature. So I think the best way to kind of start things off is to just give us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how'd you get to the point where you are so driven as an individual, so like focused as an individual and things of that nature. So the floor is yours, man.
Boredom. If I don't do stuff, I get bored.
Yes, that is very true.
I,
Yeah.
I tell
Now,
you
were
what,
you an athlete
Aswan,
growing up, or like how did all the stuff come about?
I was an athlete growing up. I played basketball, I played softball. And what I found about myself is I enjoyed the analytical and the logistical component of athletics just as much as I enjoyed playing it.
Mhm.
I was always fascinated and aroused by what is so and so averaging per game as a basketball
Even while you were
player?
playing, right?
Even while I was playing, what's
Mhm.
his batting average? What's his completion percentage if you got into football? So this was when I'm 10, 11 years old,
Mhm.
predating the days of electronic calculators, even. So when I would figure those things out, it was longhand division.
Mhm.
And what happened is
You
I
were doing
started
longhand division with stats, basketball stats, baseball stats.
I was, and I started memorizing it
Wow.
because longhand got too cumbersome.
Right.
And so I was always good at math, and that was a talent I carried forward to
Mhm.
where I'm in college, sitting around with guys at the frat house, and we would be talking about so and so. He's 1 for 7 at the
Mhm.
plate. And I say, if he gets a base hit here, he's going to 250. If he has an offer, he's going to drop down to 125 through
Mhm.
memorization of that longhand division, and got a little bit more complicated than that later on.
Mhm.
But what that ended up doing is one of those buddies was a broadcast communications major. And as he started his career in professional broadcasting, first with the Dallas Mavericks, then with the San Antonio Spurs, and
Mhm.
eventually with Southwest Conference football when that still existed, he asked me, would you help me with statistical analysis? So I moved into the broadcast booth, would supply information to him and the color analyst during the course of the game. This is back
Mhm.
in 1989. He moved over to ESPN in 1995. I moved over with him. He's since gone on to do some other things. I've stuck with the Disney Corporation, and so I'm still doing that 35 years later.
So, seeing that it has been 35 years, and that's the preference. I was actually born in '89, so I personally has seen a lot of changes in the industry. Have you seen things happen, whether it's social media, whether how dependent we've become on the internet? Has that affected any at all, anything about how you are able to do your job or what it is you do with ESPN?
In answer to your question, the changes have been immense.
Mm-hmm.
When I started off, there were set times for the broadcast of an event. The media was not controlling that to the extent that it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in college football, for instance, there'll be a 6 to 12 day window before a time is set for a game that's further into the season.
Hmm.
In the old days, the media would respond to a noon kickoff, a 3 kickoff, 7 o'clock, whenever that was set by the respective conferences and the schools. So that's one thing. Another thing that I've seen change most recently is it used to be taboo to talk about what the betting line was for a game.
Mm.
Now that's come into the mainstream. So
Yeah, there's like
the books,
ESPN Bet. Now there's like a port, like a division they have that's just
they're
ESPN Bet, right?
there is, and we
Hmm.
talk about line during the course of the game and the millions of dollars that can be
Right.
transacted as a result of something like that. Of course, the transition worked primarily in college sports from amateurism to professionalism has been
Hmm.
profound to where players have NIL now. Uh, there is a package that's out there when they come to a respective school, and particularly at the highest levels of D1, it
Hmm.
transcends salary, or rather, I should say, books, tuition,
Hmm.
room and board, things of that nature, which used to be the gold standard
Right.
legally back in the day.
So how is that, has that affected your day to day at all? Because one of the things I really want to kind of ask you about is how you're able to transition that or be able to, go to a business where you're helping you have an actual coaching business where you help other business owners. Where was kind of the connection there for you to start that? And it's called the Seed Sower, correct?
The seat sower coach, I'll tell a
It's Kirk,
story
yeah,
about
good.
coaching or segue into that first, and then we can talk about how I launched my coaching practice. 2020, of course, we were struck by COVID, shut
Mhm.
down so many things, including athletics. And so much of that was broadcast remotely. And we weren't actually live at events. That was a change. But I would be sitting here in my office in Florida. Broadcaster would be wherever he or she was.
Right.
Same for
I
the
remember
color
that time, yeah.
analyst. And so the challenge that faced me at the time, it was, son, you better get with it. You're going to have to embrace some technology in order to
Oh,
maintain this livelihood.
I got you.
So I learned a lot about Zoom at that time. I
Hmm.
learned about tracking events through various broadcast media, but
Hmm.
also communicating via an app called the Unity app. So
Hmm.
rather than wearing the headset, as I was doing at a live event, I was
Hmm.
communicating through my cell phone, my iPhone. And so it
Right.
was very awkward at first. It was change, and it's like, oh my, I don't want to do this. But I began from the premise of what can you do now? What do you know? And like we eat that elephant one bite at a time, slowly chewed away at that until I
Okay.
was able to get acceptable with using some of the technology that's associated with that. The
Right.
parallel is as I coach people, so much of coaching is predicated upon change. You're here now. How are you going to get to where you want to be? And what are the steps that you're prepared to take to get there?
Hmm.
And that can be a little bit intimidating for people because I don't want change, I don't embrace it.
Right.
But having understood that firsthand myself in that one instance,
I
it
got you.
makes it easier to empathize with someone who's timid about that. So I've been coaching people for 8 years now. My
Hmm.
journey in that began actually, it was about 11 years ago. I was late in my career, full-time career as a human resource executive,
Hmm.
and I knew that I didn't have any designs to retire, so to speak, because
Hmm.
as I said at the beginning of the show, I'd get bored, and golf just makes me mad. So what am I going to do with my time? I hired a coach myself.
All right.
And I contemplated several different things, asked one, but at about the third meeting, I said to him, I want to do what you're doing. That
Huh.
seems neat. It was a
Right.
natural transition from HR and meeting with people. So I launched that journey then and hung out the shingle, so to speak, in 2016.
So the coaching business, so and I'm very familiar with, and would you consider yourself a life coach or a business coach, or I'm familiar with that industry. There has to be something that pulls the right client in. You know, when someone comes into that world, when someone decides that they want to start a coaching business or be in a situation where they want to coach anybody, what would you say is your thing like that you would want to use to bring people in? You know, what is it about you that makes it so they want to hire you as a coach?
I'm very empathetic,
Hmm.
for one thing, and a couple of my niche markets are
Right.
people who are like I am now.
Mhm.
They're late in career. What am I going to do next? And it may
Okay.
be I'm going to go play golf, but how do we
Mhm.
coach to get to that point? But I also have a long memory, and I remember 40 years ago when I was lost in career. I was youthful,
Mhm.
and this job, it kind of sucks. I want to do something that is going
Mhm.
to engage me more. I need some help. So helping those folks that are maybe your millennials and Z's, such as
Yeah.
yourself, I guess,
Right.
to some degree, to find what the next step is going to be. But my secret sauce is relationship building. I'm
Right.
fascinated with people. I love their stories. I
Hmm.
love to piece things together. Our commonality already, we both reside in Florida, albeit different
Right.
places. I could explore that for a long time with you, and we could share our notes and build that relationship. Once we've got that relationship, we can begin coaching because we've got that trust factor between the two of us.
Yeah, and the thing is, I love the name, the seed sower, and I'm curious, like, what are some of the because you've been doing it for so long, over a decade at this point, what do you see as some of the common problems that people come to you with? What are some of their hangups? What are some of the things that you see that are reoccurring when it comes to the issues that they would want your services for and how you can help them?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Mhm.
What I hear a lot about now is impact, and
Mhm.
people want their lives to have impact. Of course, we need to put food on the table and make a living. Don't get me wrong, there's a financial incentive that's there. But mostly what I hear is I want what I'm doing to matter.
Mhm.
And I feel myself hold up right now,
Mhm.
not taking advantage of full use of the talents, the gifts that I have. How can I do that? How can I apply those? So
Mhm.
with clients such as those, we explore uh, what would be your sandwich board if you were standing on a corner of the street? What would be the superlatives? Would be the secret sauce that
Mhm.
you would like to present to people that are out there? So it gets into marketing, networking, sales, but also for them, relationship building. Who needs to hear your story? Who will benefit from them? And so we begin coaching from that perspective.
Right.
The other thing that goes with that is the life work balance issue that has been around for a long, long time.
I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that, and I hate to cut you off there, but I got to make sure we pause you in that moment. Nowadays, where things are moving so fast, I mean, one of the reasons it's called the Move Swiftly podcast is because if you had to pick a word that described the type of world we live in, it would be swiftly, right? And it is so difficult. And I'm not talking at you, I'm talking to you, because I'm a victim of this myself. It is so difficult to figure out how exactly we can create that balance when things are moving so fast and you have to constantly keep up, whether it's with messages, whether it's with calls, whether it's with outreach, whether it's with responding to this and responding to that. I would love for you to just share a little bit about. I'm just glad you. I want to just kind of tee you off in terms of how do you teach the whole work-life balance deal, because it is a very, 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 very prevalent topic nowadays.
So much blends together.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a story today, a guy named John O'Leary who's in St. Louis, 4 kids. He's a motivational speaker. He was
Mm-hmm.
talking about incorporating that balance by blending things together.
Right.
And he shared an example of what does. He was going out on a speaking trip to California.
Uh-huh.
He has 4 kids. He invites one of his kids to join him for a daddy daughter, daddy son trip where
Yeah.
they actually help support him. It's kind of like take your kid to work day to some
Right.
degree, but they also have a component of that where they enjoy where they are. And so in this instance, The daughter got to go with him to Laguna Beach, California. They did
Mm,
outdoor activities. They enjoyed all the best weather that California had to offer.
mm-hmm,
So, opportunities that exist to bring those things together. For me, there was a time when my kids were young. I would take them to some of the ESPN events that I
mm-hmm.
did, and they would maybe bring a friend. And so we would have that bond, that commonality. I
Right.
would do my work, but they would also kind of get intrigued with what is this? This is cool, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go out and talk about it more and just go through that experience.
Right.
As a member of the gig economy myself, and we've mentioned I do three things. I teach spinning classes, I
Right.
work for ESPN, and I do coaching. My favorite days sometimes are when all three of those things happen in one day. I'll
Mm-hmm.
start the day off teaching a spinning class. I'll come say hi to my wife, peck her on the cheek.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a client meeting at 10 o'clock, and oh, at 2 o'clock, I've got a plane to catch to go work an athletic event somewhere. And along the way, I'm also writing a book right now. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
I've jotted a few notes down along that way as well.
Right.
We I'll text my kids wherever I am. My kids are grown now, but the grandkids, look
Mm-hmm.
where Poppy, Grandpa is right now, and interact with them from that backdrop and that setting. So there can be
Right.
richness in blending the two of them together.
Right.
It doesn't have to be totally separate, but it can
Mm-hmm.
also be very educational and rewarding from a relationship standpoint.
Yes, and it is also important to mention if you are struggling with work-life balance and what it is you want to do, it's important to mention to ask the question, how do you want to live? All right, because I didn't hear, and you listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't hear you mention money at all in that whole like that blissful day that you just described. You know, obviously you're gonna do what you have to do to get paid, but you love helping people in your spin class. Then you love getting on a coaching client call, and then all of a sudden you're on a plane to go work an athletic event. Never heard the mention of, oh, I'm doing this because I'm getting a certain amount of money. I'm doing this because of how much they're paying me. It's all a rewarding thing. Obviously, you have to pay bills and things like that. But I would love for you to kind of speak on the relationship between, you know, money and happiness and finding your niche in that world. Because again, that's something that can get really fuzzy as we're transitioning into new careers and new things are happening.
When I was playing baseball as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
the coach would say, "You guys don't go up there swinging for the fences. I want you to get a base hit.
Mm,
Get on base. The home runs are going to come if you make solid contact." So, what I aim to do in business is focus on the base hits. I want to hit that ball square. I
mm-hmm.
want to get on base. I want to put myself in a position to score. The scoring is making money.
Mm-hmm.
It comes eventually if you're loving what you do. People can feel that in the
Yes.
relationship that you're having, and they're going to come back to you because they sense that spirit, that enthusiasm. And I want a little bit of what it is that you have. It
Right.
gets contagious.
Yeah.
So, my philosophy on it is that I've been taken care of financially.
Yeah.
I sometimes don't know how,
Right.
but the real reward, let's say in coaching, is I see somebody have a breakthrough moment, an
Mm-hmm.
aha, and that is
Yeah.
worth more than all the gold in the world to see that happen.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up back in the sports playing days because for the longest time I thought my youth coaches they were so into it. I thought that's what they did full time. It wasn't until after I graduated college that I realized that they were actually volunteering their time to be out there putting in their. I mean, the amount of work. There was actually a situation where we had moved to Pop Warner, a brand new league, and there was a rule that all of us had to wear cups. So immediately the president of the organization, he runs to a Kmart, spends his own money and buys all of us cups just so we were. And I mean, from that, I thought it was their full-time job. And again, I was say like, so you're taking money out of your own pocket just to buy us a bunch of cups, and we threw them all on the floor just to get us registered to the game. And these things still have an effect on me to this day. Like it's crazy to think about how much we don't know as a kid and how much, some men just give their heart and soul to do certain things. So that's a very important aspect of growing in business. It really is, in my opinion.
That always delicate, and for me it was the jock strap conversation.
Yeah.
Boys, it's time to transition over, but I want to respect this as a family show before I get into that.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the spinning class, because I myself too have spent time as a fitness instructor, primarily teaching boxing and things like that. I'm still a runner myself. I am kind of being pressured to do a triathlon, seeing that I've had several of them on my show, and they've been talking. It's like, all right, so now I got to get it done. When did the spin class instructor thing, how'd that thing start to pan out for you?
Well, for me, running became
You,
less
were
and
you
less of a
running? Are you running too?
possibility. I was a runner too until back problems started to manifest themselves. Thank you, high school basketball, for
Yeah,
that, which
yeah,
I'm
that
still
happens.
afflicted
That
with.
happens. That
But
happens.
I had a person that was a workmate, and he said, "Come on and join our spinning class." So
Hmm.
I did. Hey, this is a good workout. This really pushes me. It's easier
Hmm.
on my joints. I could do something with this. Well,
Hmm.
there was Bob who was in that class who was 25 years my elder. So I guess he's nearing 70 at the time. And he was full of life and he's having a good time. And he looked at
Hmm.
me one day and he said, "Kirk, you and I ought to go lead spinning classes. Let's go get our certification." And so when he put down that gauntlet, I was like, okay. So that
Hmm.
launched that back in 2008. Bob, by the way, is in his 90s. And as far as I know, he's still leading spin classes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I want to be Bob when I grow up.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it for, I guess, going on 16 years myself now.
Hmm.
It's a great workout. I actually, pardon me, I actually get paid for yelling at people, is
Yeah.
what I like
That
to
was the best
say.
thing about, yeah. Yep. That was the best thing about being a fitness instructor. Hmm.
And they listen to my
Hmm.
eclectic music.
Right.
So
Right.
Bob said to me, "Yeah, the music may not be the most popular, but if you like it, that's one person who does."
Hmm. Okay, so what do you see as like, how do you kind of see the next phase of everything that you got going on? I mean, you have the stuff you're doing with ESPN, you have the seed sower and your coaching business, and then you have the spin instructor stuff. How does everything kind of connect? What do you see as next as kind of your next, like how do you see it progressing?
I'm working on a
Oh
book
yeah, you did, man. Yeah, you could
currently.
talk about the book, right?
And that's the project I've got going. How that came about is to market my business.
Mm-hmm.
I got blogs that I put on my website. I put on LinkedIn, Facebook, some of the social media I'm on, and they're also featured in our local
Mm-hmm.
paper here, monthly column on whatever the subject is I'm talking about: leadership,
All right.
sports, coaching. Pick
Mm-hmm.
pick the subject. It's kind of what comes to mind. So my publisher for that kind of challenged me. He said,
Mm-hmm.
this is good stuff. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" No. But then I read this statistic. It said 81% of the public wants to be an author,
Mm-hmm.
but less than 1% actually does it.
Right.
So I was challenged with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to be a one percenter. So I had all these blogs. What am I going to do with them? I
Right.
assembled them to a book, and the book's titled Thoughts for My Kids and Other People's Kids:
Mm-hmm.
Observation, Advice, Experience, for probably catered to millennials and Z's, but really to anyone. So I'm in the process now collecting testimonials, getting a forward,
Mm-hmm.
and this thing is targeted to come to publication this fall.
So what's the is there a ideal reader or an ideal client or ideal person that you would want, either reading the book or coming into your coaching program? What are some of the specifics and the things that you're probably looking for when it comes to the people that you work with?
Someone such as yourself would be ideal. I'm fascinated with
Appreciate that.
people who I'm fascinated with people who are in life where I once was,
Yeah.
because I did so many things wrong and I learned from them. And
Uh-huh.
I would like to have a conversation with those folks and
Uh-huh.
see what I can offer as far as some guidance.
Right.
Likewise, people that are where I am right now that
Mm-hmm.
are thinking I'm at the end of the line, what do I have to offer? There's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dig into it. Let's figure that out
Right.
because you've got all this wisdom again and experience that can be applied. Now, who are my clients? Those and everything else in between.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I have a very diverse clientele,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been so fascinating for me because I learned so much.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know the feeling because you get the people that come to your spin class, the primarily the folks that come to your spin class, then the people that you meet in the sports world, and then in the coaching business, the business owners that have these hang-ups and what it is they want to do. So you do become very, very diverse, and that what I've learned is it really teaches, I think you already used the word, but to be very empathetic. Empathy is at the core, empathy is at the core of a lot of the work we do because what I'm finding out, what I'm realizing when I talk to young people is they do feel very alone because of these bad boys right here. These social media devices, and a lot of times they just need someone to listen to them and to be heard and things like that. So with all that, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just kind of tell people how they get in touch with you, what it is, what's the best way, where do you send them if they want to hear more?
Well, first of all, Aswan, thank you for the pleasure of getting to meet you and
Mm-hmm.
for having an opportunity to have some dialogue. I'm in Northwest Florida, out between Destin and Panama City Beach, the opposite end of the state from where you are.
Well, I
Uh,
was in St. Petersburg when I first got out here about 6 years ago. So I think I drove, is it? Yeah, Destin. I think I did drive by there. Florida's huge, guys. So
Florida is used, the peninsula where we are in Florida, we're actually closer to St. Louis than we are to where you are, to kind of
St.
put things in
Louis,
St. Louis, Missouri.
really?
Yeah, to put it into perspective.
Okay.
So interesting geography.
Mhm.
I have a website. It's theseedsowercoach.com. I can be reached at Kirk at theseedsowercoach.com.
Mhm.
And call or text me 314-677-8779. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook as well.
All right, and that will also be included in the show notes as well. All right, Kirk, the final thing I do with all my guests, I need you to use your imagination a little bit. You're about 20 years old, early 20s. You're struggling, you're trying to find a career, you're kind of wherever you were. I want you to pretend that that 20-year-old version of yourself just clicked into the Zoom room, give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
First of all, I've got good news.
Mm-hmm.
I outkicked my coverage with who selected me to marry them. So next week it'll be 44 years. We met in college.
Woo!
So you may run into your running mate with where you are right now. You just never know.
It,
But
listen to me, and I don't know, but that is so important. I mean, as a person that has been to a lot of different schools, that piece as you grow and as nonchalant as we may think it is so very important as you grow older. So anyway, go ahead. I don't mean to steal your thunder, but go ahead.
I would not be where I am now without her.
Uh-huh.
But having said that as well, for the 20-year-old, little things can matter. Uh, a connection I had on the basketball court got me into a group that was my fraternity,
Mm-hmm.
which led me to the person that I worked broadcasting with, which led me to becoming very involved in that organization and
Mm-hmm.
inspired me to go into a recruiting career, which led into HR, which also led to me meeting that young lady at a party. So
Mm-hmm.
little things like you read about in The Five People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware of those. There may be a nudge that's there to pay attention to.
Right.
Move, uh, enjoy, and I tell people, remember to breathe. Put your oxygen mask on first. You
Mm-hmm.
can't help anybody else unless you are taken care of.
Remember to breathe. Amen to that. Very, very important advice, very valid advice, very much needed advice, man. I'm definitely looking forward to keeping up with your work. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.